Afternoon, everybody. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. We'll wait.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2018 Year-End Data Request Process webcast. I think we might give it just one more minute because I'm still hearing some beeps, and then we will get started. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Terry Olson, and I will walk you through the online process for providing your plan's year-end information. Please submit any questions via the chat function. I will answer questions either during or at the end of the presentation. If we run out of time, I will answer the remaining questions in a follow-up email. The webcast is being recorded. Information on how to access the recording will be sent to you following the webcast or tomorrow if I don't get it out to you yet today. So let's jump in and get started. The first thing that should happen with this entire process is that you will get an email. The email should come from your plan administrator here at Fringe. It will look something like this email here. The subject line should say something to the effect of year-end data request for the name of your plan and then the plan year-end that we are dealing with. Couple notes on this. First off, the email can easily get caught in your spam filter. It can get caught in your junk email. It can also get caught in clutter. If you have Outlook, you might have a clutter folder, and this can easily get slung into that clutter folder. So look in those three places. If you have not received the email yet, it's possible your administrator has not sent it out yet, but it wouldn't hurt to check with the administrator and just make sure that, that the email actually got through to you. So we'll go ahead, take a look at the email. It should look something like this. Should have a few attachments. It's possible that your attachments might be slightly different based on your plan and what the provisions are in the plan. The first attachment deals with some general situations of when you might contact Fringe. So things like when you are thinking of selling your company or merging with another company or buying a company. If you have participants who are over age 70 and a half and they terminate employment, especially, contact us so we can make sure they get their required minimum distributions. It just lists off a few items like that. So it's important to take a look at that just as a reminder. Another attachment that you might see would be these plan limits for 2019. It's a good resource for you so that you know what the maximum contributions are and the maximum compensation that we can take into account, that type of thing. Deposit timing, if that is attached to your email, it will explain what the DOL provisions are and their requirements for how quickly you have to get your contributions and loan payments deposited to the plans. So take a look at that if you have not reviewed that information in the past. You might also have a copy of a census template for your use. If it's not attached to your email, don't worry about it. You'll be able to get that as you walk through the project online. So the body of the email is going to look something like this. The beginning part just explains that we have this website for you to go to, gives you a link. It actually gives you a couple links to get to that website, and it also explains how to upload your census information, and we'll walk through all of that. So once you're at this point, I would click on the link, and it will take you directly to the website that you need to get to. So a couple items on the website itself. Note that this is not the normal website that you use. Upload payrolls, distribution forms, enrollment forms, anything like that. This is a completely separate website, and so I apologize. I wish it was all one big website, but unfortunately it is a separate website for you to deal with. Now, when you get that link and you come to the login screen, the very first time that you go into this site, you'll want to click on the first-time user link that is here at the bottom. If you click on that, all you need to do is enter your email address and click Submit. Now, once you do that, within 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, you should receive an email that gives you a temporary password, and you're able to log into the site with that temporary password. Once you gain access, then you'll be able to change your password to something that's more meaningful for you. Now, a couple words on that. This is similar to the email that was sent out regarding the project in the first place. That temporary password email could get caught in your spam filter, your junk email, or your clutter. So make sure you check those if you do not see that email within a few minutes. If you don't see the email after a few minutes and it's not stuck in any of those places, I would try clicking on that first-time user link again, enter your email address, make sure you don't have any typos in it, click Submit, and wait again. If you don't get anything within a few minutes, then I would suggest that you reach out to us. Call your administrator, or you can also call our 800 number, our customer service number, and they will get you to someone who can help you. I'm always available. Feel free to call me if you're not able to get through with your administrator. All of my contact information is at the end of that presentation that I emailed out this morning. So I will also email the presentation again when I send the email about the recording of the webcast. So you can always get a hold of me that way. If you logged in last year and provided information but you don't recall your password, similar process. Click on the Forgot Password link. You will enter your username, which is your email address, and then click Submit. You'll get the temporary password, and then you can enter that, log into the system, and then change your password. So I think we'll jump in. I've got a demo site set up for this. So this is what you see when you log in. You will, we'll go through all of these different areas, but the first thing that I want to show you, in case you did log in or do log in with a temporary password, if you click up here in the upper right where there's the little upside down triangle, there's a change password option here. So this is where you change your password if you want to make it something that is more meaningful for you. Once you've done that, you're really ready to jump into the project and actually start to provide the information. So this is where you'll land when you log into the system. The very first tab is My Active Tasks, and you can see it has a 1 here. That 1 indicates that you have one project that is in process right now. So what you will do is we want to launch that. And so you look at the project here. The one thing I'll note is this blue bar is where you'll see the name of your plan. If you have access to more than one plan, then what you will see on this screen when you log in is you will see what you're seeing here, but you'll also see another blue bar right below this that has the other plan name on it. So you'll see like plan number 1, plan number 2 with the plan names. And then below each of those, you'll see the project. If you don't see this exactly the way it looks, if you log in and you just see the blue bar, click on this little caret next to it, and it will drop down and show you the project. We can jump in then, click Begin Task. That will take you right into the project. So this is what you're going to see on the project. The steps are all right up here, and we're going to walk through each one of these steps. They can be completed in any order. So the one that's highlighted in kind of that goldish color is the task that you are on at the current time. So we start out at the very first step. Let's say for whatever reason I want to skip right to the questions relating to the plan. You can click there. You can answer the questions, click Save, and then you can go back to the beginning. So sometimes you might, as we walk through this process, I think you'll see that there might be situations where you have some of the information, but then you need to look something up. Don't worry about it. Just save where you're at. You can go out, do what you need to do. When you come back in, it will take you right back to where you left off. Okay? A couple other things about all of these screens that are consistent from task to task. There's a Notes button up here at the upper right-hand corner, and you can see this one says 0. That means there are 0 notes loaded right now. You can add a note that your administrator will be able to see at any point on any of these screens, and that note can relate to that specific step. So let's say, for example, this first step, we're looking at the mailing address for the company as well as the main phone number for that company. Let's say that we're looking at this and we say, oh, that's not the right phone number. You can click on this button. Anytime you see this little document with the pencil, that's going to be an Edit or Modify button. You can click on that button. You can correct the phone number. So maybe the phone number is 9999. Submit it. You'll see it changes right away here. And if you want to, and I would suggest it's a good idea to, click on the notes, and you can add a note by clicking on this little plus sign. Anywhere that you are on the site, if you see that little plus sign, that means you can add information there. So you might just want to say, our main phone number has changed. What is entered now is correct. You submit that, close that. Now you see Notes has a 1 next to it. That means there is one note on that screen. Okay? So you can do that on any of these tasks. And I would suggest use those notes. If you have something to add, or if you answer some questions and you think, you know what, that might not be 100% right, or there's more to the story, you can elaborate in those notes. Use those because that will be helpful all the way along. So to move from step to step, as you complete a step, you can click on Save. As soon as you click on Save, you'll note that this is the task where we were at on the general task. Now it has a green check mark. That means I've completed that task and I have clicked Save. I have saved that information. It moves you to the next step. So now we're on the company task. On this screen, the only thing that I will point out here that is different that did not appear on the first screen is the little red asterisk. Wherever you see a red asterisk, That is a required field. You have to enter information in that field in order to save and move on to the next task. If you don't know the information, like I said, you can always come back to this before you approve the project and re-enter the information or modify it and save it. So this is going to be pre-filled with the information that we have on our system right now. The only field really, there are two fields on this screen that are not required. This business code field, and this is a code that we need to put on the Form 5500 filing. So if there's nothing entered there, I would suggest that you click on this link. It will take you out to the IRS website. And if you move down about halfway down the screen, I think it is, you will see these business codes start to show up. These are split up by industry, so you can find the applicable industry for you. Let's say you're a utilities contractor and you deal with natural gas distribution. This is the code that you would enter back on our website for the NIAC code. Okay? Payroll provider, this really does not do anything, and you do not have to fill out anything here. This is more a way for us to capture this information. We are working almost on a daily basis to try and connect with payroll providers to provide some efficiencies for you in providing payroll information to us. So our goal really is to take as much off of your desk as we can. And one of the big things that is time consuming for you can be that providing payroll information. So this is a way for us to collect information. The more clients we have at a specific payroll provider, the easier it will be for us to get that payroll provider to work with us to provide information. So help us help you by providing us that information if you would. The payroll frequency, you might have multiple payrolls. So a lot of times we see a lot of companies that have hourly workers as well as salaried workers. And sometimes the hourly workers get paid weekly, the salary get paid semi-monthly. In that case, you would pick weekly and semi-monthly. If you have just weekly payrolls, just choose weekly. So that is important for us as well, just to make sure that we have everything set up correctly. If everything looks good there, we'll click Save, move on to the next screen. So this screen is called Principles, this task, and what we are looking for here is information on the ownership of your company. Now, a lot of times we get pushback from people, well, you know, what difference does it make that you guys need that ownership? We need it because that really drives all of the testing that we do. It helps us determine whether or not you have a controlled group situation, and it helps us decide who is a highly compensated individual or a key employee. Those are all regulatory-driven definitions, and so it's important for us to have this information. Now, I understand some of you might have a lot of owners and you don't want to list all of them separately here. In that case, or in the case of a nonprofit organization where you don't really have owners, I would suggest that you click on the plus sign, put in the name of your company, like let's say ABC Company. For a title, select no title. And on the ownership percentage, I would put 100. The reason that you have to do that is that this screen has to add up to 100. If you have a lot of owners, what I would suggest is that you just put the name of the company and 100% ownership, and then in the notes field, I would add a note that says, I will provide a list of all of the owners. There are too many to list here. Then at that point, you can upload that file along with the census file that you'll upload to us through Secure File Exchange. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. So, to provide the ownership information, you do just like I showed. You clicked on the plus sign, put in the person's name, their title, X the box or click on the box if they're an officer, and then give us their ownership. As far as there being an officer, this is always a little touchy, and it's probably best to talk to your administrator on whether or not this person is an officer in the sense of they have discretion, they have authority, and they actually make decisions for the employer. We run into situations with a lot of companies where people do have titles, they do have officer type of titles, but they don't really have an officer level authority. So talk to your administrator about that if you have any questions. If an owner listed here that is no longer an owner, you can do one of two things, and either is acceptable. You can click on Edit Principal, this little button here, and you can change the percentage to say 0. And then you're going to get an error message. So probably the better thing to do would be to just delete that person, and you can click on this button here. Now, as soon as we delete the individual, all of a sudden we have less than 75%. You're going to get an error message then that says the ownership has to be greater than or equal to or greater than 100%. So we would need to add a new individual. So we'll call him new owner and say that he's the CEO, officer, and he has 25% ownership. If you've had an ownership change during 2018 or during that plan year that we are doing the project for, add a note here, please, and tell us when that ownership changed. Give us an exact date, July 1st, November 1st, whatever the date was that ownership changed. That can have some bearing on some of the testing that we do. So it's important that we know when that ownership change occurred. So once we have our ownership all listed there, we can click Save. It moves us on to the next task, which talks about the family members of those owners who work for the company. Now this can be a little touchy sometimes because in the land of 10,000 lakes, we also have, I think, 1 million Olsons, Petersons, Johnsons. So not only do we need you to list the actual relatives of the owners on this screen, it's helpful if you can list other people who have the same last name as an owner. So if I owned any portion of this company, and if there was a Paul Olson that also worked there, it would be helpful if you would list that person. You click the plus sign, enter his name, Paul Olson, and say he's no relation to this new owner. Let's say that was my name, Jerry Olson. So that way it's really clear to us, and we don't have to come back to you and say, is this guy a son or a relative of some kind? It's right there. It's open to us. So that's really helpful. If something has changed, like let's say a spouse is no longer a spouse, you can delete them, but then again, I would also suggest that you add a note and say that you intentionally deleted that person. They are no longer a spouse. Okay, we'll move on to the next task, and you can see my check marks are coming up green, so we're getting through this. This one also can provide a lot, or can cause a lot of questions from clients. And when we do our testing for the plans, we need to make sure that you are in compliance, or your plan is in compliance with all the controlled group rules or the affiliated service group rules. these rules relate to the ownership of the plan sponsor of your company, but also we need to look at the ownership that any of your owners in the plan sponsor, any ownership that they might have in other companies. So it's important that you fill this out. Now, for some of you, your owners might have a whole list of other businesses that they're also involved with. If that's the case, I probably wouldn't manually enter all of them here because the likelihood is you already have a listing of all those individual businesses with all the ownership. I certainly don't need you to rekey all of that in here if you don't want to. What you can do in that situation is go up to your notes, add a note to say we have multiple other businesses involved with our current owners. I will upload a listing of those. Again, you can upload that when you upload your census file through Secure File Exchange. So we'll talk about that. If you do want to manually enter a company, you can click on this plus sign in the very upper right-hand corner of the screen. Once you add the company and you've provided this information in these first columns, you need to add what is the ownership of that company. Just like we did on the principals task, you need to do it here for these additional businesses. So when you add the ownership, you want to click on this button here, the plus sign under ownership. That can get a little confusing for people because there are two pluses. Just make sure you remember the one at the very top, and if you hover over it, it will tell you it's going to add another company. If you click here, it's going to add another company owner to that particular company. So once you have that all entered, or you at least have your list ready to go that you're going to upload later, you can click Save. This takes us to the Contacts task. Okay, I see we do have a question about the ownership percentages. What date do you want the ownership percentages from? The last day of the plan year, or 12/31 for most people. So we'll go back and look at that. And this is a good example of when you're on one task but you want to go back to another task. You can just click on this task, even if it's already been completed. You can click on it and you can make any changes you want. What I would suggest is list the owners as of the last day of the plan year. If you have had any ownership change during the year, when you add your note to say what date the ownership changed, you can indicate there at that time what the prior ownership was, or you could also say that that ownership prior to like November 1st, if that was the date of the ownership change, you can say the ownership was the same as it was last year as of 12/31/2017, and that would be sufficient. So if you make changes to this, you would want to save it again, and then it will take us right back to where we were, which was on the Contacts task. So this is going to be a listing of people either at your company, employees at your company, or employees at any service providers that you have given permission to have them have access to this website. Now, for the most part, and for most of you, this will just list any of your employees who have access to provide this type of information. It will list who's identified as your primary contact, your secondary contact, your payroll contact, your distribution contact, and possibly your statement contact for benefits statements. And there might be some other contacts that are listed as well. What this is going to show for each of those contacts is their name, what company they're with, because you could have someone, maybe your payroll person is actually at your accountant's office. Then that accountant office employee would actually be listed as a contact with their company name, email address, and then what role do they have? This is kind of a funny role, but normally it would say like primary contact, payroll contact, census contact, something like that. This rights column, This is a listing of all of the security rights we have given this contact for this website. So Jerry Olson has the rights to do all of these tasks on this website. If you need to make any changes to this, add a note or contact your administrator directly and say that you would like to make some changes. That way we can go through the process to make sure the changes occur everywhere. Click on Save. This takes us to what used to be called the Retirement Plan Questionnaire. It was a separate handout that we would give you and ask you to fill in by hand. Now we have it all electronic. The questions are pretty similar to what they used to be, but there are a few that are a little bit different. Again, anything with a red asterisk is required. So when you get done filling this out and you click on Save, if it does not let you move on, it means that you probably missed one of these required steps. So just go back and review those very carefully. Most of these are drop-down boxes, so you'll have the available answers and you can choose one of those. So we'll walk through these quickly. Will a request for extension of time for filing the company's income tax return be made for this year? Your options are yes, no, or not sure, because a lot of times when you fill this out, you might not be sure whether or not you're going to have an extension on the company tax return. This is important for us to know just so that it makes it easier for us to know how quickly you might need a contribution calculation, or it's helpful for us to know from a deduction standpoint for your plan. Has there been a significant employer-initiated reduction in the workforce, for example, 20% or more of the total employees? This is a yes or no. Typically, it's probably going to be a no answer, but this question is important because it helps identify whether or not you might have what's called a partial termination of your plan. So this occurs most frequently either if you have a big layoff in your company, or if you close a division or sell a division, something to that effect. Number 3, have any changes occurred since last year in the appointment of any trustee, accountant, attorney, shareholders, officers, administrator, or investment manager? This is helpful to us to know if there is any difference in the person that we need to talk to about your plan if we talk to anyone outside. It also might be a question that we have to answer on your 5500 depending on how large your company is. If yes, describe the change. So in this field here, this is not a required field. There's no asterisk. But you could at least say, yeah, we changed attorney, and this is the new attorney's name. You could type all that in there if you wanted to. Has the company or any owner acquired or sold any businesses this year? This comes back to the whole question of, do we have a controlled group or do we have a partial plan termination that we need to be concerned about? Yes or no are your options. Is the employer part of a controlled group, affiliated service group, or qualified separate line of business? Yes or no. If you know the answer, if you don't know the answer, just say no and then add a note to say, I'm not real sure about the control group question. We will still always review this regardless of what you give for an answer, or we will at least contact you about it if we think that the answer might be different. This question, if the above answer is yes, is Fringe Benefits responsible for performing the testing for the entire controlled group? If your answer up here was no, you can answer NA on that question because your above answer was no, not yes. Do you maintain a qualified plan that Fringe Benefits does not service? It's a yes or no. Typically, it's going to be no, but there are situations where a client might have another qualified plan that we don't work on. And in that situation, we would have to coordinate with that other plan TPA to make sure that the testing is done, to make sure that no one exceeds any limits, including the company. Are any employees on a leave of absence? If yes, indicate in the notes field in your employee census file what type of leave. So this could be military leave, family medical leave, could be disability, whatever. You can answer this yes or no. If you do have anyone, make sure you indicate that on the census file that you put together. The same with the leased employees. Did any leased employees perform services for you during the year? Yes or no? Will you be making a non-safe harbor match contribution for the year? Either yes, we've computed the amount, yes, Fringe benefits should calculate it, or yes, we deposited match during the year, or no, we're not doing a non-safe harbor match. If you are doing one, you could enter the formula here. So we're matching 100% up to the first 6%. Or you dollars, we matched up to $50,000. Will you be making an employer non-elective or discretionary profit sharing contribution? Again, yes, no, either Fringe calculates, or here are the total dollars or percent that we want you to use, or we'll decide on this later. If you know what your formula will be or your total dollar amounts, you can enter that in this field here. Safe harbor contribution, similar options. We deposited safe harbor during the year, we've calculated the total amount, or Fringe benefits should calculate, or no, we're not making one. You can enter the total dollars right in this field here. Doing our reports a little bit differently. We will be providing the reports to you in a PDF format. If you want a hard copy format, you would just indicate here if you want that. The other thing that will be different about the reports this year is we are splitting them into 2 separate reports so that you will get reports on a little bit more timely basis from us. So the first report that you'll probably receive is a compliance report that will have all of your testing in it. The second report that you receive will be your government compliance or your government filings report. That report will have all your trust accounting, your loan reports. It will also have a copy of your 5500 filing. If we prepared an 8955 SSA form, that would be included in that filing as well, or in that report as well. Number 18, should a copy of the reports be provided to anyone outside your company? Sometimes people want us to provide a copy to their CPA, something like that, or their attorney. That's fine, we can do that. In the next question, you would just provide an email address and a name for that person that you want us to copy. Okay, so I see I have a question here for question 9. That was the question I asked, are there any employees on a leave of absence? The question is that employees on leave at the end of the plan year or at any time during the plan year? I would say at the end of the plan year. Now, if you did have someone that was out on an extended leave of absence during the plan year, such that maybe it affected their total number of hours worked, so they ended up working only 400 hours for the year, I would note that on the census file when you, in the notes field, when you upload that file. Okay, so we will save this. We've finished that, and we can move on to the next task. I do see we have another question on the Principals tab, so we'll move back to that. It says, which should be listed? Shareholders with ownership percentages that do not work at the institution, or officers with no ownership, or both? Both. So you want to list anyone who has an ownership stake in the company, and then you also want to list anyone who is an officer with authority to act on behalf of the employer, even if that even if that officer does not have any ownership percentage. So then in that case, you would add them as an officer, no ownership. I believe it'll let you do that. Let's check it. I might be wrong here, but we'll call him Joe Officer, whatever. We'll give him a title of treasurer. We'll say he's an officer with 0 ownership. Okay, it let us save him. So he shows up right here. So both is the answer to your question. So I clicked, and you see it took me right back to my 5500 task, which was the task that I had just gotten to. So this is a short one, only 3 questions, and some of you will have fewer than 3 questions, depending on your plan. The first one, did the employer fail to transmit to the plan any participant contributions within the time period described? So this is what we always refer to as late deposits. Did you have any late deposits? You can answer yes or no here. We will look at this as well, and if we think that there is anything or any contribution deposit that might fall outside of the parameters, we will definitely come back to you on this. But we do ask this up front to know if you have that information. If you are an underlying of a multiple employer plan, question 2 probably is not on your project, and so you don't have to worry about that because it's not there. For standalone plans, you are required to have a fidelity bond in almost every situation. If you do not currently have a bond, I would suggest you check with your liability insurance broker for the company, or the insurance broker for your company. Or if you don't really want to involve them or they can't provide it for you for some reason or other, you can click on this link and it will take you out to Colonial Surety, and they can give you information on a bond for your plan. The bond needs to be 10% of your total assets in the plan. That's a general rule of thumb. So enter in whatever your bond amount is. And then the last question, is your plan, or if your plan is required to attach an independent auditor's report to the Form 5500 filing, provide contact information for the auditor. So if you could just give us a contact name and email address or phone number, that would be awesome. That is not a required field because that's really only going to apply to the larger plans that are that audit. So we have that completed, and I think actually I'm going to show you what an error message looks like. So we'll click Save, and it says your choices have been saved. However, the step cannot be completed because there are additional required fields. So that should tell you right there that you need to look for these red asterisks and see if you have a blank where you did not answer a question. On this screen, it's not so bad because it's short. But if you were on the plan screen where there are a lot of questions, it's easy to miss one of those fields. So just pay attention to that red error message right in the center if there is a problem and it doesn't seem to move you on. Okay, so this takes us to our census or employees tab. Now, this we can really get census information from you in several ways. We feel like the easiest way to get it now is to have you just upload a file to us. There are a couple different ways that you can get your file put in place. You can either look right here, you'll see kind of a blue field or link, and it's kind of hard to see. It's a weird color blue. But if you click on that, it's called Field Descriptions. It will give you a listing of the information that we want, the format that we need it in, and what that actually means. So you can create your own file if you want to. This is the type of information we need. The other thing you could do, if you want to make life a little easier, over here towards the left where it says Import Export, if you click on the button with the down arrow, it will export a file to you that is a census template. And this is what it looks like. It just has all of those different fields listed here, and then you can fill out the spreadsheet, save it, and then upload that to us. Okay? So those are probably the two best ways. Export the template and fill it in, or look at the field descriptions, which is going to list those same columns that are shown on the template, and you can provide them to us with the columns being in any order, okay, as long as we have the information. So at this step, we haven't uploaded the file yet, so let's move to that. So we'll go to this tab up here at the very top where it says Secure File Exchange. You click on that, and then you click on New Exchange. When you do that, you're going to select your file. So I have a file out here that I already put together. You select your administrator here at Fringe. So I'll select me since it's me. You can put a message in here if you want, but you don't have to. Then you select the plan that you have, which for most of you, you're only going to have one plan listed there, and click Send. So what's going to happen is your administrator is going to get an email to say, hey, Jane Smith uploaded a file to the Secure File Exchange. If we move to the Sent tab, as it refreshes, you'll see this is the file. So you can always go back to this as long as the administrator hasn't deleted the file or you haven't deleted the file. Let's say you've uploaded that file to us and your administrator found something that needs to be changed on that census file. You can click on the link, download the spreadsheet to you. Here's your spreadsheet with the information that you had entered. And then what you can do is delete this one that you uploaded earlier. You can make your changes on that Excel file that you just downloaded, and then you upload it again by clicking on New Exchange. So let's say we had a long list of owners that we didn't want to list everyone on the Principals tab earlier. We could upload that file in this same spot. New Exchange, select the file, select My Administrator, select the plan, hit Submit. On that, I active End Task. It's going to take us right back where we left off. So this is going to be the same even if you log out of the site. When you log back into the site and you click on Begin Task, it's going to take you right back where you left off. So I see we have a question here. Do we need to include employees who terminated prior to the plan year but still retain a balance in the plan? No, you do not. As long as we have received a termination date for that person and our system knows that that person has terminated, you do not need to provide information for those employees, even if they still have a balance in the plan. If you have any questions on that, always feel free to contact your administrator and ask. Okay, so we've uploaded our census file now, so we can click Save. You're going to get this message. Are you sure you don't want to enter census data in this step? Click on Skip this step. That is a message that unfortunately I can't get rid of. The system wants you to import it through that screen, but we've found that it works easier if you just upload the file through Secure File Exchange. So now we're on our approval step. The one thing you want to look at is on the left-hand side, you're going to see green check marks all the way down. If you see a red X, you're probably going to see that that same task up here does not have a green check mark. Click on that task, go back to it, complete it, save it, and then you should be able to be taken right back to this approval screen. Once you see all green arrows, or check marks, you're ready to sign and submit. You click on Sign and Submit, you put in your name. You can enter your title and phone number if you want to, but you certainly don't have to. Click on your email address. I'm going to change this actually just so it's easier for us to see here. And click on Submit. It's going to say, okay, we've sent a confirmation email to you at this email address. Say okay. If I flip back over to my email, my test email that I have here, should be getting confirmation email. It takes a minute or two sometimes. We'll go back into the site, and I do want to spend just a minute talking about some of these other tabs. This second tab is called Distributions. This is something that, or a place where you can go to check on the status of any distributions that have been submitted for your company. You can look at this at any time throughout the year. Usually this status is going to be fairly generic, saying in process or completed or aborted. Aborted is typically going to mean that there was something where we had to reject the distribution or withdrawal. There might possibly be a note on something, like this one is actually completed, but if you click on View, you'll see that we had actually entered some notes on this. So someone at Fringe had entered, well, it was me, I guess, on the test, we are waiting for sponsor approval. So that means we can't process this yet. We're waiting for the plan sponsor to approve it. And then this was another example I had given. This particular employer actually responded by adding a note to say, I'll have it for you in the morning. We don't typically communicate through this with you, but if we do have notes in our file, you might be able to see some of those notes there to see why something is taking longer than what you thought. We are trying to be a little bit more specific on the status on some of them that are in a waiting or hold pattern, but this does at least give you the ability to have a little bit of insight as to the status of a distribution. The third tab, Data Collection, this is where you can go to see how you filled out that year-end data collection process, okay? So if you look at this, you'll see we have the 2017 year. We also have the 2018 year, which is what we just walked through and completed. If you click on Report, it's going to download an Excel file to you. Now, I know this is Excel, so logic would hold that you could make changes to this and then upload it to us again, but this is actually a report. So it's locked down, it's not modifiable, and you can't make any changes to it. This is your proof of what you've actually uploaded to us. When you look at this, you'll see the first tab says Summary. The following tabs all correspond to the individual tasks that you completed in the project. So the General tab has the information about the company, contact information, the mailing address. Company, that lists those questions about the payroll frequency, payroll provider, that kind of thing. Principals, the owners, and so on. So this will list all the information. Now, your Employees tab is not going to show the individual employees. but you can go back to the Plan tab and see how you answered all those individual questions. So if you come into this and you're like, I wonder how I answered that last year. If you did this on this system last year, you can go back and download the report from last year also and take a look at that and go to the Plan tab and see how you answered those questions. Documents, everyone should have one document out here that says compensation definition. That is going to be the definition that your plan uses for compensation. So before you even fill out that census information, that census file, I would highly suggest that you come to the Documents tab and download the compensation definition. What's highlighted in yellow is the definition that your plan uses, and then this will show the underlying types of wages or types of compensation and whether or not that is included in your plan's definition of compensation. So for example, here on these W-2 wages, earned income is not included in W-2 wages. But welfare benefits reimbursements are not, that kind of thing. So if you refer to this, it will help you to make sure that you provide the right compensation amounts. Secure File Exchange, we already went through. The inbox, that's where you're going to see any files that we might upload for you to look at or to download. The Sent tab is going to list any files that you have uploaded to us. Okay. The Industry Bulletins tab, we are not using it this time, but we might be using it in the future. So it doesn't hurt to take a look at that every once in a while. When I go back to my active tasks, you can see it says 0 now. Remember in the very beginning it said 1. Now we have no active tasks. We've completed our project, and we're basically done until the administrator might come back to you with any additional questions. So that was all I had for you today. If you have any additional questions, I'll leave this open for a few minutes. Or, like I said, feel free to reach out to me or directly to your administrator. Again, I recorded the webcast today, so I will send out a following communication telling you how to access that recording if you want to share it with anyone else in your office who might go through this process. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I hope you found it helpful and informative, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.